I spent 2 centuries searching for the platinum chip. It's my invention, my property, mine! Now be a good courier and deliver it!
Hey, I don't have to take this. I've met smarter brains in jars and they all had dementia. You think you're so smart. Building a nation can't be that hard. I'll make my own Vegas. Just you watch. Isn't that right, talking robot box that agrees with everything I say?
That was probably pretty dumb, huh?
I knew I could count on you. Hey, people! I'm the Hearth Guy, and today we're talking about the lovely concept of creating an independent nation state out of the rotting carcass of Vegas. If you haven't seen my other 3 videos on Fallout New Vegas' major factions, this might not make any sense to you. But here we are anyway. Cause after explaining why the new California Republic is on life support, why Mr. House needs to be taken off his life support, and why Kaisar and his Legion need to be beaten over the head with his life support, there's only one logical solution, right? Just do it yourself. Unlike many lesser games, New Vegas opts to let you, the player, just take the reins and declare yourself the king of the wastelands, hijacking everything Mr. House has set up and using his plans and resources to kick both the Legion and the NCR right out of the Mojave so you can, do something, I guess. Specifics are largely left up to you, but I think I speak for most of us when I say this sounds like a pretty good deal. Why worry about the corruption of the NCR, the brutality of the Legion, or the ego of Mr. House when you can create a utopia of your own? Well, and though this is often my preferred ending, I will not be a liar and say it's without its drawbacks, and most of them wrap back to the roles of Yes Man and the Courier. For that first one, Yes Man is sort of a strange device when you think about it. What starts as a simple personality program on a standard Securitron is changed into something closer to the likes of Victor, one of Mr. House's personal envoys. Through just a follower of the Apocalypse's hacking and Benny's instructions, Yes Man was born and given the capacity to grow beyond his initial programming. Although he was still just designed to always agree with whatever anyone said to him. Seemingly they weren't able to adjust it, so he'd only listen to Benny. A liability for him, but an opportunity for the Courier, who can leverage Yes Man as a means to claim the Mojave for themselves. The Courier is, without exaggeration, the most competent main character in any Fallout game, and that's a fact backed up by the lore. Being a Courier is already a job that only the toughest take on in the Wasteland, and that's not even mentioning surviving 2 bullets to the head long enough to get them removed. But by the end of the adventure, the Courier is a cyborg treasure hunter that crossed all the most dangerous places in the Western Wasteland and lived to tell about it after looting a treasure hoard of dangerous weapons and technology. Becoming the guardian of Big Mountain is enough to justify why you don't want to cross the Courier, since almost nowhere else equals what that place can churn out on demand. Will it probably be dangerous and self-destructive? Yes, but if you're pointing it at someone else, then it doesn't really matter if it turns things inside out by accident. So, if the Courier doesn't want you getting near Yes Man and potentially pulling a double Uno reverse on them, chances are you aren't getting near him. Especially after House is removed and Yes Man starts hanging out inside the Lucky 38 with all of House's defenses and none of the fleshy drawbacks that he had. Heck, even normal pulse grenades won't work since Yes Man exists across the Securitron network and can boot himself back up into any one of them. And by the end of the Independent Vegas run, he's used some of House's old codes to upgrade himself, so at least according to himself and the devs, he doesn't say yes to everything everyone says. And the Courier no longer has to worry about following too closely in Benny's footsteps. You might be asking, but Hearth Guy, isn't this all a good thing? An unkillable cyborg who alone runs a robotic army to protect an independent Vegas? Surely nothing can go wrong here. And to that I'd say, of course not, straw man. If the Courier is a perfect paragon who completed all the side objectives. The fact of the matter is that the independent ending is the hardest to talk about in an objective fashion because of how much it relies on the player's choices. The player could shoot up this whole town and leave Vegas off worse than when they started. Or the player could ignore every faction's problems and leave no real stability after they decide that they're in charge now. It's required to sort out several factions in order to get the other endings, but an independent Vegas with nothing done is just a time bomb waiting to go off. Especially with cases like the Great Khans, Fiends, and the Omertas running around. Don't even get me started on whether they blow up the Securitron army or not. Good luck patrolling the Mojave, wishing for a nuclear winter whenever you have a max of 100 Securitrons. Even Yes Man can barely pretend like that's a good idea. The literally wildcard nature of the Courier's decisions can't be properly accounted for, so the independent ending can swing from either an anarchical nightmare to a beacon of New World liberty wholly off of what we assume they'll do, which, since they're a player character, can never be 100% accurate. Suppose a perfect outcome, where the Courier has gotten everyone to calm down for more than a few seconds, the cons are gone one way or another, the fiends are all past tense, both of which would actually free up a lot of space for resettlement, and the Brotherhood is, well, honestly, any outcome that isn't becoming more aggressive than before is an okay outcome in this instance. This independent Vegas would still have to deal with how it govern itself from then on. Is the Courier going to make themselves a distant administrator like House? Will they establish a republic like the NCR, or maybe rule with an iron fist like Caesar? Or maybe they'll just throw up their hands and let everyone run themselves while they just keep anyone else from taking over. The truth is, in most of these cases, they can never last. Because of Yes Man. After becoming more assertive, quote-unquote, he will likely go along with the Courier from then on. They got that far together, and Yes Man has never shown any express ambition for power, so it's unlikely he'd have a reason or desire to turn on them. But unless the Courier's interested in sticking their brain in a jar, again, then they'll die eventually, and the resources Yes Man commands will be left in the air. Best case, the Courier has a hand-picked successor or somehow gets Yes Man to obey whatever government they might create for Vegas. But either option leaves the power to command the robots in unknown hands. And even if that first successor is trustworthy, eventually you may get one who leads more closely to an Edward Sallow than a Joshua Graham. And that's just assuming passing the torch is even possible with a newly assertive Yes Man. Like I said, Yes Man has no real reason to be ambitious, or want to rule anything. And with how he's designed, even just self-preservation isn't super high on his list since only something that threatened the whole network could be a danger to him. But it's always possible that he just deems whoever comes next as being unfit to listen to. And then what? Maybe a new human-based police force or military can be made that phases out the Securitrons, but if Vegas has relied on it up to this point, that'd be a rocky transition, which creates a new possible problem should, under any circumstances, the Securitrons become seen as a liability, or even a threat to the people of Vegas. With no one to tell Yes Man what to do, if they see Yes Man as a threat and vice versa, well, anyone remember Terminator? Just minus the time travel. Probably. Who knows what Big Mountain has going on? Now, all that's fairly speculative, and Yes Man is smart enough to avoid unnecessary fights, so just going along with whatever the Courier wants, including whoever they choose to follow them, will probably happen. But Yes Man's not the only thing keeping this whole show together. The very presence of the Courier and the loyalty or fear they've instilled in the various groups could be enough to keep Vegas together. The Boomers were willing to fly out on just their word, and few things in the wasteland can rival the Bomber. The Remnant performed one last show at theirs and Arcade's request, and several settlements around the Mojave have them to thank for their continued peace and prosperity. Or their never-ending suffering, but both can get the same results sometimes. The Courier's unique experiences can also lend itself to benefiting Vegas, such as making friends with or clearing away tribes in Zion, securing a possible trade route that's independent of the recently destabilized NCR or Legion. And the Big Mountain may usually churn out abominations, but some of this can actually have practical applications, like the Botanical Garden's fertilizer and advanced stealth and weapons technology. You know, all that stuff Elijah from Dead Money could have been doing if he wasn't busy huffing red clouds and blowing up trains. The Courier's experiences with the inevitable threats of tunnelers also makes them the most qualified person to lead Vegas's defense against infestation. And Yes Man's nature makes him able to keep operating even if the Lucky 38 were compromised, something House couldn't even do. So as long as they're working together, the future of Vegas in the immediate seems like only an uphill slope. But this circles back to the previous issue of what happens when the Courier is gone. Again, unless they create some structure or government to take the reins after them, then the further stability of the Mojave could be at risk, which, if the tunnelers persist or come later than expected, could backfire tremendously without the Courier's experience to fall back on. Ideally, the courier would create some kind of organization or way for the various tribes and communities to communicate and work together, like a council or congress even. But pulling so many disparate cultures and groups together would be a challenge in the long term. I mean, can you imagine the super mutants of Jacobstown working well with the boomers? Or the Brotherhood of Steel just doing nothing while the Securitron army patrols the region? Maybe if you convince them to be more open to the NCR, you might set them up to ally with the independent Vegas, but you can only do so much to bend their beliefs until they can't bend them any further, which would introduce conflict with the followers of the Apocalypse that would almost certainly be expanding across the Mojave in the chaos of independence. Unifying any of these groups with one another, or even just making them leave each other alone, would require the courier's presence. And once that's gone, we have no idea whether they'll all remain peaceful. Of course, this is all assuming the courier doesn't just throw up their hands and tell the kids to have a free-for-all while they maintain the borders, which would be a mess in and of itself. See the problem with analyzing this ending? There are so many variables that all must rely on the actions of a small number of people with only the resources they have access to. Resources that vary from player to player. I mean, the courier could just follow House's plan verbatim, along with all the societal flaws that come with. And that wouldn't be too far from expectation since Benny didn't exactly leave a game plan behind. Just the vague notion that he and the chairman would be better at running Vegas than anyone else. The courier could make a mini NCR with all the corruption liable to come from it, or they could genuinely try to follow the old world example of America to the T, not the watered down version of the NCR. Of course, the courier could nuke both the NCR and Caesar's Legion, let them die off, and then be quite literally the only alternative for anyone in the wasteland, so it doesn't matter how good they are at their job, because necessity forces everyone to work together. It's a frankly sociopathic idea, but hey, some couriers be like that. Now, what's my idea for how this could all work? Simple. Make every individual settlement or unified group govern themselves while sending representatives to consult and work alongside the courier in a kind of board of directors, at least in appearance. This group would also then select the following successor to the courier's role, an administrative position that Yes Man listened to while he remained assertive enough not to just obey whoever came by. Mix in some of the remaining bits of NCR and Brotherhood tactics and military technology alongside whatever could be learned from the Enclave remnants, barring, of course, that one could leave settlements to defend themselves with militias. Expand trade into the Utah area, and if the Great Khans went north to make their own society, reconnect with them to establish relations as well. Maybe in the chaos to come from the Legion's inevitable collapse, start taking control of those trade routes as well. And last but certainly not least, begin using some of the more stable inventions from Big Mountain to improve the quality of life across the Mojave, while using the followers of the Apocalypse and the likes of Arcade and Veronica to help shave off the edges. Cybernetic implants to extend and improve a person's life, sources of fresh water that can be teleported out, advanced botanical methods, absurdly reliable AI software, and the minds to expand on what exists for the betterment of all mankind. Minds that will actually have to focus now that the courier is the overseer of the mountain. Don't repeat the mistakes of the NCR or the Legion by expanding too rapidly, and don't follow House's example by governing the people in a detached manner. Focus on stability and defending the new nation's borders, and if you really want to push it, maybe send some Securitrons to raid the Sierra Nevada now that Elijah isn't around to make treasure hunting in there 1,000,000 times harder. Grabbing that gold would be very valuable for creating a standardized currency for the Mojave that isn't just bottle caps. Maybe drag along some of the vending machines and hologram tech too. Of course, both of those came from Big Mountain anyway, so the courier could probably just replicate them. I suppose you could also send people to raid the military silos of the Divide or begin preemptively purging tunnelers, but anyone that you'd send there would have to contend with the marked men and be careful not to touch anything that would set off another nuclear Armageddon. Still, the Divide is another treasure trove that few except the courier and Ulysses know how to access, so maybe. Is all of this probably just wish fulfillment, a stretch to suppose what an independent Vegas could be? Yeah, of course it is. Because that's the whole point of the wildcard ending. Logically, what I just explained would be if everything that could be done was done to give the Mojave the best chances it could have. The courier built a culture in the Divide on accident, so we can only imagine what they could do on purpose. Of course, they say if you want to see God laugh, tell him your plans. And based off what little we've seen of the Fallout TV show's second season, I am not filled with confidence that the Mojave has become some technologically advanced beacon of liberty and independence. If anything, I'd wager we'll see a Mojave worse off than anything I could have suggested, if only because that makes for a more dramatic story. And because Todd Howard probably hates New Vegas. There, I said it. And it's probably because we, the fans, can't stop comparing every other Fallout game to it. But it sucks to be him. This game is a classic for a reason. It's the fact that I could talk this long and this much about just the potential stories that the Mojave Wasteland could tell that should reveal just how layered this world Obsidian made is. It makes anything that so much as suggests following up the story feel dangerous. How can you tell a sequel to a story with so much variation, so much player choice, in a way that doesn't delegitimize the story millions of players have made for themselves? Honestly, I don't know if it's possible. I enjoyed the Fallout show for the most part. It still has its flaws and all, but it was nice to see a franchise I love given the spotlight. But it remains to be seen if anything I said comes true. If the history of this world is remembered and used to build upon its past, that's what made Fallout and New Vegas especially feel great. It felt like the world, for as scarred as it was still moving forward and learning from history. Because while war may never change, we do, as do the roads we walk. Thank you as always for watching, everyone, especially if you've watched all the way through my tour guide to the Mojave and its major factions. This has been a nice way to get back into the swing of things and try to create a healthier way of making videos and maintaining a schedule. If you have any suggestions for series and worlds for me to cover next, either as reviews or in the manner of a tour guide, feel free to suggest down in the comments. Speaking of comments, even without a suggestion, I'd appreciate it if you did, so I can get a feel for your thoughts and opinions and just so I can interact with you all directly. And if you want to support me directly, you can become like all these lovely patrons and channel members, generously donating to me, including my newest channel member, Agustine, who was once challenged by the devil to a dance-off for his soul, and beat him so hard he came out of it with a golden chainsaw. I think that's how that story goes. My patrons actually got access to the entire tour guide as soon as each video was done and well before I released them. Meanwhile, my channel members have access to several videos I have set to release in the following weeks. Both, however, have access to a private Discord server where they can interact with me and have a quiet corner of the internet to just hang out in if they want. But regardless of whether you choose to support me directly, just being here and watching this does more than enough. So consider liking and sharing the video, but either way, thank you for your support. Remember, I am the Hearth Guy, and say it with me now, I will see you all next time, around the hearth. To think this whole shebang started with me ranting about Fire Emblem characters and plot lines to a few hundred people. Now I'm ranting about Fallout characters and plot lines to a few thousand people. We've come a long way. So maybe it's time to look backwards. Not to the same place exactly, but to one of the worlds of Fire Emblem. It's been a long time, my old nemesis.